in fear. You got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You got to be carefully taught.
Do you have the courage to love someone?
Hello, and thank you for joining us at A Seat at the Table with Race Together. Today we're joined with Jawan Chambers, Lauren Millage, Nina Vasquez, and I'm Jessica Floyd. So let's cut into it. A lot of people want to understand what is Race Together and what we're basically doing today on this podcast / video broadcast. So Nina, would you like to give a little background information about the organization?
Yeah, sure. So Race Together is an organization started by students of the University of Hartford, and the purpose of the organization is to explore the complexities of race and ethnicity and privileges.
So moving forward, we intend to do these online broadcasts weekly and put them out every week around Tuesday. And then also we want to have very profound conversations and discussions about different topics that the club's events, programs, and different initiatives are going to address. This is more of what the club meeting would be, except we're doing it online. So we're breaking the barriers of the classroom walls. So, Jawan, what scholarly research or articles do you like to read or watch on YouTube?
In terms of research and platform that keep me informed, I watch The View or ABC. I follow a couple people on Twitter. Aisha finds Seren from her YouTube channel. I kind of like discovered that, and that sort of like set me on my path to consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
A couple news reporters and things of that nature. That's sort of what I follow for like my scholarly research. And in terms of what got me informed, also I'd say my textbooks because I'm a sociology minor. So.
Nice. And Nina and Lauren?
Well, I get a lot of my sources from a variety of places. I don't only look at like news outlets or like news articles or something or things like that, but I barely watch TV, so when I do watch TV, I do look for sources like MSNBC, sometimes CNN, depending on the topic. But I do look a lot at scholarly articles, revised journals from professors from all over the world, and I make sure that what I am looking at, I am not only looking at from the perspective of the United States, but a global look on it. Mm-hmm. So I look for sources that go beyond of the United States borders. So yeah.
Nice. And Lauren?
I usually, for the most part, I watch on, I have Sony News on my phone, so that keeps me for the daily updates, but I dig more into history than I do of current events. Usually I just kind of choose a writer that I find that's interesting and dig into the time period that they're living in to get historical context. So I'm not only understanding what's happening now, it's better for me to understand the past and work from there.
Nice. So, intersectionality is a word that comes up a lot, and we've dropped that word several times in the initial meet and greet meeting. Mm-hmm. What does that word mean to you guys, and how do you apply it to your research?
Okay. I mean, I have to go back to when I was a child. I think that my parents did a really good job with helping me be intersectional without actually telling me that was intersectionality. So when I grew up, I definitely grew up being intersectional, looking at everything through an intersectional lens. So then when it came high school, and then I actually figured out what the word intersectional was and what it actually meant, it was like an eye-opening for me. And then I said to myself, well, I'm already intersectional in this way, so now I could broaden up the ways that I could be intersectional. So I guess, how do I explain it? Intersectionality could be a very messy term. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of us take away from the term what we like most about it. So all of our definitions could be a little bit different. But when I think of intersectionality, I think of the intersections of experiences from all across the border, whether it's sexual identity, racial identity, ethnic identity, and all these other things, and like the privileges and the struggles and all these parallels and intersecting things that make up a person. So
Right, because I know most people, when they would see me, they would think, just black woman, and that's two intersectional experiences. However, I am a black woman who is heterosexual, cisgendered, and able-bodied.
Yep.
So there's multiple layers to that. And even though I am a member of a group that has a lot of challenges, I also fall under a category of a hegemonic group for a few of those identities. And I do have privileges because I fall under that sort of identity. So I think that's also a little bit important to understand with intersectionality. What have you guys really taken away from that term?
Well, when I first learned the term, it was outside of the classroom. I think it was actually one of Saran's videos who I mentioned earlier, where I learned the word, and it sort of stuck in my vocabulary ever since. But to me, it's just sort of like the foundation of how society works and sort of understanding who in society has privilege, and sort of ending the conversation of like oppression Olympics, where it's like I'm more oppressed than you. So that way when we have these conversations, people aren't just kind of like arguing to be like, well, I have it harder than you. So that's sort of what it means to me.
Coming from that, also with what you said, what I learned from learning about intersectionality is where my privilege lies. And so having that information to me lets me know where I can also help. So being, like you said, a black woman, that's not my place of privilege, but being cisgendered and being heterosexual, that gives me a voice, a voice to make space for others who may not have voices. I think when we realize our privilege, then we can help others better than if we were to have this oppression Olympics.
So, aside from intersectionality, we all have different diaspora memberships. If you guys feel comfortable, would you like to share what diaspora you're from? And then also what a diaspora is, because a lot of people like diaspora. Is that like Pepto-Bismol's cousin? Like, what's diaspora?
I'll just go ahead and say like what I am. I am, first generation Caribbean American. Everybody in my family is literally from the island of Jamaica. Just me and a couple of my cousins and my sister are the first ones born here, and so that's how that's my where I come in terms of diaspora. But in terms of how I identify, I just usually say Black American because I don't really align with the traditions a lot. So it's sort of it's weird because sometimes I walk like, oh well, no, I'm gonna bring out my Caribbean side, and then other times I'm like, no, I'm a Black American. So that's how I'll leave it.
Oh, me? Okay. So mine's a little bit more complex, I guess. So I was born and raised on the island of Puerto Rico. I moved to the United States when I was 13. So then, I became part of the Puerto Rican diaspora. I fused into it. I'm not, born into it. So I've been here, since I was 13. So basically, I carry a lot of my culture and a lot of my traditions with me. I really don't align with American culture at all. And that's something that I guess people peg on a lot when they meet me, and you always hear comments of like, you're very Puerto Rican or you're very authentic. So I am definitely part of that diaspora, a growing diaspora, and it's been growing since, I would definitely want to say 2008, because of the economic decline, and now even more so because of Maria. But we always have been a growing diaspora. I don't think the Puerto Rican diaspora has ever stopped growing. So, yeah.
Now, when you say you fused in, can you explain that just a little?
Yeah, so usually diasporas are what people would consider displaced people from their homeland. Mm-hmm. So basically it could be like a Puerto Rican American who, obviously born in the United States but identifies as Puerto Rican because they either are first generation Puerto Ricans, second generation Puerto Ricans. Then, you have people like me who were born on the island and were raised on the island, and then they leave for, X, Y, and Z reasons. And so, you fuse into the diaspora. You leave your home, and then you're part of this other group of people that identify with the same thing as you, but you carry now a different culture and you're living in a different place.
And a person can be a member of multiple diasporas.
Yes.
So for Juwan, for example, you said that you're Caribbean.
Right.
So you could be part of the Caribbean diaspora, but then also be part of the African diaspora
Yes.
with your African descent.
Exactly.
Okay.
Which is exactly where I am. My part of the African diaspora. My grandparents were slaves, and then I recently found out that I am also Caribbean, and so I got both of that in me. So,
And that's why we're best
for
friends.
diasporas.
And then I'm African American, so I'm part of the African diaspora, but I'm also part of the American diaspora, and we are American history and culture.
Well, I have a question for you because you said authentic. So, like,
Yeah.
who is the one saying authentic? Is it
Yes.
Puerto Ricans? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have to say it's Puerto Rican Americans, Black Americans, or just different communities of people of color in general, where they meet me and then they see like how I talk or how I explain something, or if I celebrate a certain thing that usually their Puerto Rican American friends don't celebrate or don't talk or don't experience.
Okay.
That's when I get, you're really authentic, like you're the real So yeah. So,
Do you ever feel like that gaslights you a little?
Yeah, definitely. Because then I start thinking, what does authentic mean? What does it
Right.
mean to be authentic? And then I think that authentic is equivalent to exotic.
Mhm.
And I have an issue with that, because then we could get into like sexualization of culture and sexualization of identity. And I have a very big issue with that. So yeah.
Understandably so. Speaking of gaslighting, Lauren, what do you consider that to be?
Gaslighting is a tactic used to make a victim question their own reality, and I think it could happen for two different reasons. Either a person or a group of people just really don't understand where someone's coming from, and I think at that point they take it upon themselves to get educated on it. Or it can happen more maliciously when people are purposely making you feel like you're wrong or feeling like your reality is a lie in order to gain power, because it is a power tactic.
Right. For me, gaslighting it's basically similar to what Lauren just said. It's basically a manipulation into making you doubt or question your reality. Anytime that I've seen it done, it's been the malicious way. It's never been like, oh, I really don't know. I'm gonna just ask you if you're delusional. So I think that's what gaslighting is. It's basically borderline psychological and emotional abuse. So.
I want to add into that, like, also I think that even with gaslighting, you could force assimilation, because once you have a person question, then they start saying, should I change these aspects of myself in order to fit in with the status quo? And so I do think that there's forced assimilation within gaslighting.
And that I just had personal experiences of being gaslit in some classroom settings. And mainly, I feel like it's pertaining to a lot of the topics that we're going to cover today. Colonization, the meaning of what enslavement is. And when I say enslavement as a black woman, most people automatically think I'm talking about African slavery in America. Meanwhile, I could be talking about enslavement of the mind, enslavement of spirit, but for some reason, coming from me, those words are perceived a different way, and then I get gaslit when I'm trying to explain this is what I'm talking about, and then you're like, no, it's not, you're talking about this. You have a covert plot. I'm like, no, I just want to simply talk about what the topic is at hand. But since we're speaking about colonization, what do you guys think about that?
I feel like you have the strongest opinion, so you should start this one.
I have a lot to say about colonization. Like I always tell people, I come from a colonized nation, a colonized body. I was born and raised in a colony, so my experiences are definitely a little bit different from what people read in a history book of what colonization is. People call Puerto Rico a territory, and in reality, it's not a territory. It's a colony, and we have to call it what it is. And, I was raised in Aguada, Puerto Rico, and it's on the west side of the island, so away from the San Juan area, away from the metropolitan area. And I grew up about 20 minutes away from a military base that was half active. And, when you're growing up, you don't really realize that you think it's normal to go to your dentist and your dentist be in a military base. And I think that that's something that us Puerto Ricans don't talk about enough, where these things are not normal. You shouldn't be going to your dentist in a military base. You shouldn't be having pizza on a military base like this. That's not normal. And then when you think about colonization, I think about exploitation. I think about enslavement. I think about tragedy. And I think about abuse. Not only physical abuse, psychological abuse, and emotional abuse. And then I could go into it for hours just because, you know, I guess I'm a product of something of it that's still around. Because a lot of people want to think that colonization is over with and we're living in a post-colonial era, and we're not. And I also want to mention that, like, you know, Puerto Rico is not the only colony. You know, we have Guam and we have the U.S. Virgin Islands. And, you know, there's a lot going on. So once the conversation starts rolling, I'll start putting in my 2 cents.
I mean, she kind of wrapped that up. I was going to say the same thing. It's still around.
Did,
so
that's it. However, beyond political colonization, what about colonization of the mind?
Yes.
Because you don't have to colonize the territory. You can really do a lot of damage up here.
Goodness.
You know, people. Usually when we talk about colonization of the mind, I just use the word conditioning, and so because that's basically where it stems from. And so conditioning people to be anti-black, to be anti whatever their identity is, to be anti-LGBTQ, like whatever it may be, they're just anti that, and it stems from that same, you know, history that she just kind of explained in terms of colonization of a land. And I think it's actually more prevalent now because of U.S. media. So like that is massively exported, so we can colonize people through the visuals that we're seeing.
I think when we say colonization of the mind, I think it's really important to like put out there that it's psychological abuse. You know, when you basically say this is red, this is red, this is red, this is red, and then you have a whole mass of people not questioning it or not even wanting to look into it because they like blindly believe what you're saying, that's abuse. You're not letting somebody think for themselves. I think that this country is a very good example of colonization of the mind. I think with
what is it not a good example of?
I say, you know, like with a lot of, even like with mass production of certain things, the way that they perceive certain things, the way they put it out there, like Joanne said on media, because media right now is very big when it comes to modern day colonization of the mind. Where people see it on Twitter, see it on Facebook, and they think it has to be true because it's there. Or they don't question a source like the New York Times, or they don't question a source like CNN. Like, you know, we have to take into consideration that these sources
question
can.
their mama.
Yeah,
like it's
yeah,
like,
you know, you have to take into consideration that these sources can be wrong, and you have to see what point of view are these sources coming from. You know, like, I don't expect CNN to portray Puerto Rican history correctly. You know what I mean? If they tell you that history is a certain way, which is proven that, you know, U.S. history has been whitewashed, and that is colonization of the mind, of a product, of whatever you're trying to put forth there. You know, when you take something, you distort it that works for your benefit, that is a form of colonization. So I think that that's something that a lot of people, it goes over their heads, where it's like, this is not a form of colonization, but it is. It's psychological abuse. You know, when you can't think for yourself, when you are a puppet, that is psychological abuse.
I would quickly like to touch upon what you were saying about CNN, because some people might mistake what we're trying to say as painting that as fake news. And we're not saying it's fake news and the sources are invalid. However, people can slant a source to a more colonized agenda. And I think that's important to note, because some people just might take what we're saying to be like, it's not fact. And it's like, there's facts. However, you can present every fact in a certain way to suit your work.
And no...
And it happens with every...
Right, because that's what I was just about to say. It's
everywhere.
like every person, even like it down to the individuals, somebody's going to report a story differently because that's them as a person and how they see the story. So it may not be the whole truth. They might take things out we all know it's like television, so it's got to be, salacious for TV. So I don't feel like people should take that to mean that we're calling all news, all newspapers, all of this stuff fake news, because it's literally just the truth. Like, they're gonna skew things in their view. So like, if you watch Fox News, you're gonna get a more conservative view on things. And if you watch MSNBC, you're getting like far left. It's just, it makes no sense. Like, that's literally how it works, and that's why people stick to the channels that they watch in terms of how they consume the news. And I feel like people should actually get out of that box and start watching every single channel, and then maybe they can open their eyes and think critically, like, okay, well, this person is reporting it this way, this person is reporting it this way, and this third party is reporting it this way. So maybe here is the truth in the middle.
Yes. Exactly. And then I think we touched a lot about socioeconomics and sociopolitics. Does anybody want to take those up?
Socioeconomics is basically social behavior meeting economics, and it basically categorizes people on how they do in life. It can be determined by how much you make, the family you come from, the neighborhood you live in, things of that nature.
So how would that pertain to a topic like colonization that we were just speaking on, socioeconomics and sociopolitics?
Take that away.
I was actually waiting for Lauren.
Okay, Lauren.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so when it comes to socioeconomics and colonization, it's all about the power dynamic of it. How do I say this in the right words?
You don't want to offend people?
No, it's just a matter of
Articulating it.
yeah, so it makes sense. Like, it makes sense in my head, but how can I make that come out? When you are, those who have the power have the ability to determine where other people go in society. People can gain that power through different ways, and some of us really just can never gain that power, not in the society we live in now. And so when it comes to socioeconomics, I'll say for those who are, oh goodness, I'm gonna pass.
It's all you, Jess, Anita.
Okay. I think that socioeconomics, as far as colonization, I think has a lot to do with, especially like exploitation and tourism. I think plays a strong role. A lot of people don't want to think about their lovely Caribbean vacation as a contribution to other people's downfalls, but it is. And the exploitative nature of tourism has locked a lot of these countries into a relationship that is not ever beneficial or will not ever get them on the track to true independence. They're relying on other people to come, visit, dump money, and then somehow have that money trickle down. And with this hurricane season, we've seen how socioeconomics and tourism has devastated these areas because they can't even make the money from the tourist attractions because they've all been decimated.
Right. I think that's the misconception people have. That they think that tourism is going to help like the economy of whatever island or whatever country they're visiting, without realizing like where are you staying and like who is that money going to. So it's sort of like they're not conscious of it in terms of, this is me oppressing another group of people. Like I'm literally leaving my country, going to another place and oppressing this group of people unintentionally.
And even if somebody were to go over to, let's pick a country.
Italy.
No. Somewhere in the Caribbean or South America. Colombia. We go to Colombia, right? When we exchange our money for their currency, it comes out so much more. $1 US is like, I'll give a random figure. Like, let's say $1 US is 10 Colombian dollars. People are like, oh my gosh, I'm so rich here. And it's just like, yes, because when these people try and come here, and they convert their money, it shrinks. And then that's why they're in an economic downpour when they get here and they have to do certain jobs, certain things. I feel like it's all a cycle, and people need to really figure out how to piece it together and realize how what they're saying is an incomplete thought of what is actually playing out in reality.
I think I want to go a little bit further when we talk about tourism because So I think a lot of misconception is that, we sometimes think that people are not aware that they're doing harm. Then, like when I'm in Puerto Rico, I was in Puerto Rico over the summer for vacation visiting my family, and we were in Rincon, which is a very big tourist area. It's the capital of surfing. And then, so there are a lot of American people that go there. So we were at the beach, and I heard somebody say, "Oh, I come to Puerto Rico and nobody speaks my language." and then it's when you take in consideration that you're in somebody else's home, you're in somebody else's safe space,
But the thing is, how does that process in your mind that you think, not that it's not offensive, because that's one thing, but how do you think that's logical to say? You literally left to go to a different country,
exactly.
You expect everybody to speak American, meaning English, but English.
And that's something that comes with colonization, and it's a power dynamic where you expect that wherever you go, your language is spoken, your traditions are supposed to be the ones celebrated, and it's. You have to take into consideration. I left my place to go to your place, and therefore I'm going to respect your place.
Right.
I'm not. That's like me going to your houses. I'm not going to jump on your couches. That's wrong. And I'm not going to expect you to offer me a glass of water. I'm not going to expect that. I'm there. If I'm going to go, I would hope that even though they don't know that they're attributing to a colonization process, that they're there to learn about the culture, to learn about the heritage, or to take the beauty in. But if sometimes they don't even do that, but they expect to get something in return that helps their power structure in their head. So again, going back to that, why doesn't anybody speak English? Where are you? You're not in England, you're not in Australia. It's very difficult, because then what happens is with tourism, it's not only exploitation of the people, but exploitation of the culture. And, when you go to the San Juan area, it's so Americanized that it's sad. And that's where you question, where's the authenticity? And then when you have, boats and ships and just companies and corporations going to the San Juan area, it makes San Juan what people consider, very modern. But what is modern the things that Americans touch. So that is an issue that I have with tourism.
Message.
So, yes, we could get into that a little more.
I just want to because this is not a way of saying don't go abroad, stay in your country, and don't leave.
Yeah,
that's not what the message is.
It's saying don't act up when you go when you leave. Have some respect.
Logan Paul.
Just have some respect.
When I did go abroad, when I went to South Korea, they did have a meeting with all of us. That I'm thinking of it now, it felt like common sense to me. That maybe just be because of my position in this world. Is that they had a message saying exactly that. There are rules here, there's a culture here. You're going to be there for months. Don't get comfortable. In South Korea, people are allowed to have open bottle carry is a thing there. And what they say is just, even though you can do that, no one actually does it. So don't take advantage of that. Don't go running through the shops. Don't steal from other people just because you can. And because you have, as an American, you do have that American passport weighs a lot.
Yes.
That's like when your mom is like, when we go in the store, I don't want
Don't
you to
ask
touch nothing. Don't ask for nothing.
Don't look at nothing.
It was a whole 2-hour-long process of them teaching us how to not be jerks abroad. And I'm sitting there this is not natural information. But
do you feel like that comes from when you're part of a dominant group? You just lose all touch of anything, because I feel like that in itself is a privilege. Even speaking English, you're expecting other people to speak it. I feel like that's you trying to exert a privilege over other people. The American passport, because we have seen in cases people steal things, do petty crimes abroad, and then get swooped in and rescued.
So, when you are used to people adjusting to you, you get comfortable and may not even be conscious on your part, conscious on their part either. It's just the way that society is structured. And for that dominant group who is comfortable, they expect to be comfortable everywhere you go. But when you go to someone else's land, someone else's place, someone else's heritage and culture, you're not supposed to be comfortable. It's not meant to be comfortable. You're going to feel uncomfortable in a place that is different from you, and that's supposed to be the experience of being abroad. That's when anyone who has to come from anywhere else in the world, when they come to America, that's how they feel, and you have to take that into consideration. And if you don't like that feeling when you go abroad, don't do that to people when they come here. It's not okay.
I think that goes back into the colonization of the mind. Because if you are American, you're told American is like the greatest country in the world. God bless them. Like everything is just America, 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 America. America first. Like so, when you go abroad, you have this instilled, I guess, like power or like royalty. Oh, it's just like you go there to almost be praised. Like you think people are gonna praise you because you're American, which is funny because you told me the story about you going to Korea, and then you said I'm American after they asked you what you were, and they were like, "Oh, are you okay?" Because they're concerned for us. Like it really doesn't make sense.
No, it's weird because at first they ask like, or where, because again, it's Korea, so everyone's very homogenous. So the first thing they ask is like, "Oh, are you from Nigeria or something?" Like they're basing it off my skin. I'm like, "No, I'm American." And then they're like, "Are you safe? How's your family?" And it's scary because they're seeing things that are happening through the news or online. They're taking this in, and yet they can see the dangers, but people here can't see it, and that's scary in itself.
Yes, it is. We're going to end on that note because I've gotten scared. But really quick, main takeaways. We'll go around the table. Whoever wants to start. Nina, Joanne.
Oh, it's gonna start? Okay. Well, my main takeaway is that I hope each episode creates some sort of conversation for people that isn't divisive, that isn't hateful, that isn't closed-minded. I hope that people can learn something when they watch our episodes. I hope that if they don't know enough on something and they watch us and we may, enlighten them on information, they can walk away with that. I hope that it starts conversations in the home, like people watch this or like show it to somebody so they can help educate them, things of that nature, which is kind of what like I've done watching other panels like The Grapevine or watching even, YouTubers who have taught me mine. I'm like, oh, you've got to watch this. It's deep.
Yes, and we clearly always want to pay tribute and homage to those who laid it down for us. Grapevine. Yes. But I also hope that we are giving insight to other people. We're giving understanding. We're giving people the tools to make these connections on their own and be a little bit more of a global community member rather than a national or identity-driven member of society.
I hope that this makes people be curious. I think often this information can be perceived as being boring or being laborious to learn. And it's not laborious, and it's really intriguing once you get into it. It helps you understand yourself better, understand the world better. And I think it only takes one small piece to make people want to get involved in it. And I hope that we can give that small piece to someone.
Yeah, I think also, I want people to understand that a lot of the topics that we are going to be touching on can make them feel uncomfortable because there are things that they probably never thought of before or probably...
And please feel okay being uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Because if you're not uncomfortable, that means you're not
Exactly.
receiving.
It's okay to be uncomfortable. I know that I didn't know all of this, at one point. And there are a lot of things that when I started learning, I was like, whoa, that's really uncomfortable because that went against a lot of colonized mindsets that I had within myself. And it's okay. I hope people leave with questions, but not doubting everything you said, but more of I should look into that a little bit more, or I never thought of that. So that's the main goal. It's hearing our conversation for you to have another conversation outside. So
excellent. So stay tuned for our next episode. Thank you.